To the violent.
Well, Senator.
Yeah.
I want to call this meeting to order. It is 6 p.m. Our next scheduled meeting is September 15th. This is a hybrid meeting, which means with Zoom as well as in person. We have Dr. Z, who is on Zoom, so I have to acknowledge that he's on Zoom. He's a voting member on this board. It will be uploaded to, so it's live on YouTube, but also this meeting that's on cable will also be uploaded to YouTube. I would ask everybody to stand for the pledge of allegiance. The pledge of allegiance.
United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is the second meeting in a row that we haven't had to have a moment of silence, so that's pretty good news. The first agenda item for scheduled appointments is a certificate of recognition for Sister Julia Doraldo. From the Board of Selectmen, certificate of recognition. We, the undersigned, do hereby recognize Sister Julia Doraldo, Dominican sister of the presentation, to whom we extend our sincere gratitude and appreciation for her life of faithful service, as she celebrates more than 70 years of her religious profession in the United States, Vice Province of the Dominican Sisters. In witness whereof, we have hereunto set our hands and caused the great seal of the town of Brighton to be affixed on this 18th day of August 2021, and signed by the Board of Selectmen, Ken Pacheco, Leonard, and Selectmen Sobrakis. I will be giving this to her tomorrow, along with former Selectman Nancy Gould. Ask for a motion to approve that certificate of recognition.
So moved.
One second.
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Roll call. I'll do a roll call. Lynn?
Aye.
Dr. Z?
Aye.
Ken Pacheco is an aye. The next certificate of recognition is to Kenneth Raymond. This is also from the Board of Selectmen, certificate of recognition. We, the undersigned, do hereby recognize Kenneth Raymond, who has more than 20 years of dedicated service to the town of Brighton and its residents as Chief of Staff to State Representative Patricia Hackett. Your efforts as a key partner between Brighton and our state government have had a significant impact on many Brighton projects and initiatives, the successful result of which will continue to have a lasting benefit to our community for years to come. On behalf of our small town with a big heart, we extend our sincere gratitude and appreciation. In witness whereof, we have hereunto set our hands and caused the great seal of the town of Brighton to be affixed on this 18th day of August 2021. Signed by the Board of Selectmen of the town of Brighton, Ken Pacheco chairperson, Lenny Howell clerk, and Dr. Z, also signed as a member of our board. I would ask for a motion to approve the certificate of recognition.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Roll call. Mr. Selectman Hull?
Aye.
Dr. Z?
Aye.
Ken Pacheco is also an aye. So I want to congratulate you, Mr. Raymond. Are you like to speak first?
Well, all I want to say is, things are gonna get worse for you guys. No, Ken's been my brain and my right hand man for a long time, so I am so grateful that you recognized him.
Thanks. I just want to say that I've had a great time working with people with Dyken. I've had a great time with the numbers of boards of selectmen that I've worked with over the 20+ years. Interestingly enough, the very first project I worked on with the town of Dyken, first day, was the demolition of the old and the construction of the new Dyken Berkeley Bridge, which was was incidentally the very longest project I've ever worked on with the state. And my very last project, my last few days before I retired in July, was working with Michael, who I knew at the State House, which you all know, on putting together the American Recovery Act funding package for the town of Dayton on the projects that you're looking for. So, as you know, I'm very appreciative. As you know, I'm not far, I'm just down the street in my role as chair of the Board of Selectmen, chair of the Board of Trustees, Crystal Avenue. So, and you know what we're doing over there. So, many times, so you know. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks, Brett.
Thank you.
Michael, you also. And Tommy's
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Tommy's been great.
I just wanted to point out that many residents over the course of my tenure the last 5 years, I can't tell you how many have come up to me to just comment on how responsive, in particular, Mr. Raymond has been in State Rep Haddad's office, but in general, the entire office. I can't tell you how many people have said how responsive you've been and helpful you've been with different state matters, unemployment benefits. It really, really does go a long way. It really does matter. And I just want to thank you for your service. I don't know how many thank yous get back to you, Mr. Raymond, but we do get them. And I just wanted to pass them along to you and thank you.
Thank you. As a public servant yourself, you know that very few thank yous get handed out. But thank you. That's very, very kind of you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Very appreciative.
State Representative Haddad, legacy.
Oh, no, as I said, he's been my brains and my right-hand man for 20 years, so if there's backsliding, you'll just have to sort of whip me into shape. But thank you.
So you're not going to volunteer anywhere to work for our state rep?
I've been involved in public service and government for 38 years. On local, regional, and state level. No reside to be elected or go to the federal level. And I'm just doing a lot of stuff that you never really had an opportunity to do, but mostly spend time with my family, because all of you know, there's a lot of time that you absolutely lose with the family. So that's mostly what I'm doing at this point. And of course, the ag construction project with 7 buildings is keeping me busy.
Thank you. Anything with the certificate?
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. Thanks.
They just need that picture with the 2 selectmen anyway, but if they're overlooking on Zoom. Sure.
I'm the guy behind you.
I know, now you're fine, just watch me up there.
Yep. Now, I won't see your boy.
You want to do it again so we can get.
Oh, yeah, with the Zoom.
Yes.
Over here and no,
It'd be kind of hard.
I'll be near the wire. Want me to hold this? Here we go. I'm used to writing these, not getting these.
Oh.
Got it.
Thank you.
Yep.
The next agenda item is Market Chief Town Clerk, who's going to talk about the 2020 census and how it impacts number of precincts. I don't know if anybody's seen the stats, but in the past 10 years, I believe, of all the towns in Bristol County, Dayton is getting the most percentage-wise as far as population of 1,000 additional residents in town. So this is going to require, my understanding is 3 precincts instead of the 2 that we presently have right now.
Thank you for having me. So tonight I'm just here for informational purposes only. You touched on it perfectly, Ken. We are, last week, the 2020 census results were posted. And yes, we did grow a lot. We are now at 8,101 residents as of April of 2020. So that's a growth of 1,015 residents from 10 years prior, in April of 2010. So an easy way to remember that is 101 people every year the town's growing by. So I like that stat. Unfortunately, what that means is we have to grow to 3 precincts. Once you go over 4,000 residents, you have to add a precinct. So I'm here just to tell you that news. There's a local election district review commission in the state, and they require a local adoption by the Board of Selectmen. And they're basically the ones that work on those precinct maps with the town. So they've worked with us on that already. It's only a draft version at this point, so I'll be coming back to you guys in late September, early October, looking for adoption of the map. So it's reviewed. I've looked at it with the planning board, Harry yesterday. Basically you look at any future growth of the town, like housing projects. The 2 main ones, Strawberry Fields and Forest Hills, are not large enough to really impact the numbers. It's less than 1% each one, which is enough to skew the numbers of the precincts. So, but that was looked into. We also look at, different races, how anybody's votes would be diluted. And then they also look at tails of the precincts. Basically, they should be square blocks, as close to square as you can get. We had one little outlier, which I worked with the state to get fixed. This is an additional cost to the taxpayer. 3 precincts means more election workers, voting equipment. So that's, I guess, unfortunate. As a taxpayer myself, I wish there was a way around it. I did contact the state to see if there's a way to appeal it. Because we're only at 101 residents over, for the 4,000. There's no appeal process. That's what I was told. If you try to submit 2 precincts, it would be rejected. So we have to just follow the law and move forward. So it's a fact. We have to go to 3 precincts. Lastly, I just want to say I did share this with all department heads. I want to be as inclusive as I can. And we have 6 weeks or so if there's any questions to wrap it up. So I can come back to you guys in October and we can go to adopt it.
My only question, I've read everything that you provided us, but my only question is, are we still going to be able to have the election for the town in the same spot with 3 precincts? We don't have to have some, 1 precinct in another area.
That's a good question. I think we can make it work where it currently is. I would guess I'd have to work with the Board of Health and see if it would work. I would really like not to go to another location. We don't have the resources. It'd have to be in 1 location, but I think we can make that work. And I guess I have plenty of time now to get you a definite between now and October. When I come back, I will have that answer for sure.
Mr. Pacheco, you mentioned that we cannot appeal. Are they offering any money as far as grants or aid? Because it's no secret that the population of Massachusetts has shifted, that we haven't lost throughout the state. They have to be aware that the shift has impacted more towns than it has helped in regards to numbers. People are moving out of the cities into the burbs, into the diapers. And as a result, the smaller towns that don't have as large of an industrial base and don't have as large of a tax support base are going to be more impacted than a Fall River or a Taunton and Attleboro, whose numbers are probably going to go down. And the impact to services will be less than it will be for us. Example, schools. The more children that come to the district, you can multiply that by at $9,000 a year per child. This Swanton is losing that $9,000 expense. Dayton is probably incurring that expense. As a result, I was curious if there was any way the state would help us with this additional expense.
So they set out basically guidelines for the process, what to expect. One of those guidelines, they do talk about cost, because, not only is this, we have a cost to let all residents know that their precinct has moved, it's a cost for mailing. We have to give a clear description of the bounds and of the map, so there's a cost there. And then if any voting equipment, having getting the word out to the public, there's a cost. And in those guidelines, it does say it's the responsibility of the municipality, those costs. I think it would not hurt to reach out to the state and ask if that is the case for everybody. But the guidelines do say it's the responsibility of the town.
Dr. Z, do you have any questions?
Yes, so Selectman Hull, we have the same brain again. So that was my first question, was if there was any grant funding or anything to support at least the equipment. I think we would have to buy another like ballot machine, right?
That's another issue. Our ballot machines are kind of antiques. They don't even make parts for them anymore, so they probably all get upgraded at the same time.
Okay.
Yes, we
And
need.
then my immediate concern is, and I apologize, this may have been covered, the audio, it's a little hard, so I can't hear every word that you're saying, Mr. Clerk, so I do apologize, but when does this go into effect, the additional precinct? And if it's FY22, are there monies in the election budget to support the additional precinct? The current FY22 budget that was adopted at the annual town meeting in June.
So it would go into effect December 31st of this year, unfortunately.
And is there monies in the current FY22 elections budget to support any costs needed for the additional precinct that needs to be created?
I think for postage, we would be fine, letting all the residents know in the mailing. I have no idea what to expect for the cost of a legal description of the bounds. Obviously I have a budget for that, so I think we'll be okay.
Okay, well, obviously, since there's no way around it, I myself as a selectman, I will support us finding the monies, because obviously we have to. But I would like us, if possible, to look into if there is any way that we can offset the purchase of like the 3 additional ballot machines that you're talking about.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Selectman Hull?
In light of what you just said about increasing costs and how old our ballot machines are, probably be a good thing to give you time so you're not scrambling come budget cut time. You could put together a proposal of what you're going to need. Some costs, some cost comparisons.
So there's only 2 companies you can buy ballot machines from. So it's LHS and there's ES&S, that's it. And they are vetted through the state and they're vetted on the federal level. So I've already got quotes for the town, they'd be right around the $30,000 mark, a little less than that. And that's for, right now we have 2 ballot scanners and a spare in case one breaks, which if it breaks, it's gonna break on election day. So we would go to 3 scanners and a spare. So it includes the cost for all of that.
So you're going to,
It's around 30,000, that's rounding up, so it'll be a little less.
which is an additional expense. It wasn't in your budget this year.
Right, it would be a one-time expense, but then going forward, if you have 3 precincts, it is more poll workers too.
So is this something you're gonna have to go before the town at the special town meeting?
For the voting equipment, yes, but for the additional precincts, would be, I would go before you again.
Any other questions?
No, thank you, Mr. Clerk. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
The next scheduled appointment is Pat Collins, the Health Agent Board of Selectmen for planning discussion.
Hi, good evening, board. My name is Tom Pires, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen. That was years ago, Chairman of the Board of Health. At your request, we are meeting tonight to discuss, I believe, staffing and future staffing on the Board of Health going forward. I'm going to be very brief because I feel that our time will be better served by us responding to whatever questions you may have, because I'm sure you know what we do and what we're doing and the progress we've made in light of COVID. Some of the things I'm going to be reading, actually, this first paragraph, and this is for the benefit of our residents and our public. We do many things, and the conception or the misconception that all we do is have 3 restaurants to inspect within the town, which is far from what we do. So I'll start with this. The board, this is actually in the annual town report. And for those that have read it, it's going to be a little redundant. The Board of Health administers health inspections, food establishments, tenements, condemnations, sanitation inspection, and enforcement of Title V, including soil evaluations, animal inspections, tobacco control, stormwater bylaw administration, town nurse functions, including emergency immunization dispensing, site planning and operation, health nuisance abatement, abandoned houses, solid waste disposal, recycling, household hazardous waste disposals. We also are involved with AAA in West Nile, and I would like to comment for those who haven't seen it yet. As of yesterday, we had a positive West Nile virus. I'm sure it was probably more than one mosquito, but there were positive tests up in the northwest quadrant of the town, which is around Maple Swamp and all of that area of Chestnut Street, so forth, so on. So I just wanted to put that out there since hopefully you get a better viewing than we do. Throughout the COVID pandemic, the Board of Health was instrumental in advising, guiding, and assisting the 4 different schools, which includes the Bristol County Agricultural High School, on protocol and procedures. During this period, all governor's orders were monitored for compliance and enforcement if necessary. The meeting is consistently being held with school administration, staff, and nurses to ensure the safety of our children. Although face coverings became an issue at times, the Board of Health only enforced the minimum requirement of the governor's orders, nothing more, nothing less. Moving on, the town continues to realize substantial annual savings from the in-house review of stormwater and septic plans in lieu of a third party, as we did for many years prior. Finally, as most people should know, the Board of Health agent and the Board of Health members are available 24/7, 365 days a year. Some of our future plans include the online permitting, which should save a substantial amount of time, I believe. Oversight of all aspects of transfer station operations, better manage the budget. And we also want to begin a review of local regulations for accuracy, consistency, and compliance with Mass General laws and regulations. So that's where we're at. I don't want to bore you with a lot of numbers and so forth, of permits and so forth. So, we're here to answer some questions. Moving forward, either myself or Mr. Pillar.
So, just so you know, that I'm not gonna be prepared to make a decision tonight, but I would ask that we put a placeholder for the special town meeting. This may have to come up before the special town meeting. My question is, what does the Board of Health agent do that's different from the Board of Health committee itself? You and the other chairperson, the other two members, and what's the separation of, is there any separation of duties and responsibilities?
Well, the Board of Health agent is usually the primary go-to for any complaint or inspection or whatever. I have been out because I'm qualified on some. I've been out to drug tests. I'm not certified, but I'm able to myself watch as the water goes down during the prep test. I'm able to do food inspections if necessary, and housing if necessary, minimum standard housing. The agent is just an all-around, I believe that everything that happens in this town is in some form or shape related to public health. And, we're lucky to have someone, as I mentioned before, who was able, with his skills and abilities, that we can save a lot of money by utilizing his skills. And that is something I think we should explore going forward. Our agent is a certified PD. And, there are times when that may come, if he's willing to do that, it's not in his job description, that we, I think, maybe want to take advantage of that. But, of course, that's a lot of negotiations in the future, so.
Selectman Howard, you have any questions?
Yes, actually, it's not a question, it's a statement. On March 3rd of this year, on budget negotiations with the Board of Health, Dr. Segoffis said that he would support the recommendation of the wage study committee on this very issue. And that's, unless he's changed
Well,
his view
the
on
wage
that.
study is for,
Excuse me, let me just finish
Okay.
my thought. That is going to be my position on this.
Selectman Hull. So I just wanted to add, I believe that night I misspoke. And what I was referring to that night was the wage study that's being done on the clerical union. That would not include the health agent's position. It's a non-union position. So I just wanted to clarify that statement. And I stand by that statement, by the way. I'm not saying I'm not. But it just doesn't apply to the discussion of the health agents expanding roles and responsibilities. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Chairman Pyers.
Yes, I was going to say the same thing that Dr. Z said, that the great work that Roz is doing, I know her for a long time, she was our administrative assistant on the ZBA. She's doing an excellent job, but the wage study is going to deal with her.
yeah, I'm not discussing,
Yeah, it's just that.
tonight we're discussing staffing and up.
It's just that the wages came up on the information that you gave us, so that's what I'm looking at. Dr. Z, do you have any questions?
I guess my question is, so I read the entire report. I thank the Board of Health for putting together this comprehensive report, and it was very illuminating. It was very big picture, and I really appreciated it. My question is really more a nuts and bolts question. I guess what do we feel collectively would be fair compensation for the role of the health agent, and how much of an increase would that be over what was approved at the annual town meeting?
Was that a question for me?
Anyone?
Okay. Prior to the annual town meeting, there was discussion of salary and wages. So in conjunction, at the because of what was going on with change of town administrators and other things that were happening and got in the budget, I think it was, not an opportune time to do what we were looking for as far as wages and duties and responsibilities. So there was some discussion between our current town administrator, the finance committee, and myself, and Mr. Pilling, that we would back off the request for a special town meeting, and it was somewhere in the vicinity of $70,000, which is 14,000 over what he's currently making. And we would try to meet on mutual ground so we could move forward to the special town meeting with a similar request with new duties and responsibilities. So the bottom line of your question, it would be in the vicinity of $14,000.
That sounds about right from what I recall, Chairman Pires. Thank you.
I was wondering, either the Board of Health or Mr. Mullin could provide a list, chart, if you will, of comparable wages of health agents in the same socio-demographic graphics, communities.
We've submitted that prior to the, I was gonna bring it with me and I didn't. We submitted that prior to the annual town meeting. And we can submit it again. There was a package we submitted to the Board of Selectmen and Town Administrator. Mr. Pilling is the lowest paid health agent out of how many communities? 8, 10? I think we did 8. Yeah, so he was the lowest paid. The health department is the lowest paid department within the town of Brighton. I don't know if you knew that. And we have the least staff. So, we have a big job with a few people and a short budget.
So I think that information Selectman Hill was presented to us, I think before you became a selectman, so I don't think we.
No, because there's a match that those.
Yeah, I don't think we saw that information, but we were given that information, but it was prior to being on the board.
Just in favor, okay, I'm sorry.
You have another question?
Well, it's a quick, it's a statement, because I don't want either yourself or Todd to get the wrong impression. Fair is fair, and right is right. And I will do based on the input, the data, the information that I get. And as someone new on the board, I don't evaluate Todd. I don't see him on a day-to-day basis. You work with him closely, you make a recommendation to us. I have to represent the taxpayers as well. So I on this issue, having that chart will help me a lot.
Well, there should be a package, I suppose, with Mrs. Brady. Did we still have that package? Yeah. So it will be available if you want us to do, we're short of time, I'm not sure we can do another survey with.
But you have that.
Yes, we do have the survey, yes,
So you can just pass it on to me.
absolutely.
Yeah, and also in there are the salaries of the departments and salaries of department heads. And there's a lot of information in there, I think, that once you look at it.
I would make a comment in regards to that, and it's a caution that former FinCom head Ed Schwartz made to all the departments. And I noticed it in your report. And I really get concerned when we make statements like, even though the responsibilities are equal to or exceed other department heads. I feel uncomfortable pitting one department against another, one department head against another.
Well, I don't do that either.
That's why I'd like to see what town to town is paying. I don't think it's fair to compare the building conservation person, because they do different jobs, they have different issues that they have to deal with, different exposures and the like. You know, obviously, Mr. Schwartzman was making that public statement, his concerns with, so we wouldn't have infighting or jealousy. That's why I'd rather avoid that and more focus on
That's
what are
not
they doing
wrong.
in Swansea, what are they doing in Somerset, you know, and how does that compare? And then based on that, that's how I'll make my decision.
That's fine.
So can I just piggyback off what Selectman Hull is saying? In Somerset, which again, their agent does probably get paid more than obviously ours does, which Chairman Pires has been highlighting. But in their situation, I believe their health agent is also the conservation agent and also the stormwater agent. So they really piled on a lot of duties, but then in Somerset, and I'm only talking about Somerset, they then compensated that individual, acknowledging those expanded duties, which brings me to my question for Mr. Pilling. And I know Mr. Pilling or Mr. Pires, we've had this conversation. This is more for the people of Dayton because this conversation has come up. Can you highlight some of the duties, like the expanded duties that you'll be taking on post-COVID? And specifically, I mean, things you may not have been able to get to while we were under a state of emergency.
Let me try to answer that. Well, we did continue with all the duties and responsibilities. During COVID, a lot fell behind, a lot of our filing and so forth. Mr. Pilling consistently works outside his job description. And if it went by the job description, we wouldn't be saving probably $20,000 a year for plan reviews and all that. As I mentioned, I think the knowledge, and again, we're lucky to have someone with this type of knowledge. I don't think you will find well, I don't want to say you won't find, but very few health agents have the skills and abilities. I don't know what else I can say.
I don't dispute any of those points.
His performance speaks for itself and what he can do. So.
And I guess my last point is, and I don't know what the intention is in terms of something like a contract, but I think for me personally, if I were going to support the salary increase based on the expanded duties, I would want us to at least talk about, as a board, with the employee, a contract to enshrine that and really enshrine the duties and the expectations that will come with, the increased salary, possibly the increased salary that we're discussing, the request.
Just so you know, Selectman DeGraffis, we've been trying to do that for 3 months since we talked with Finance Committee at the annual town meeting, and we haven't yet to get to that point. And now here we are with an article that has to be drawn by September 9th. We haven't sat down to negotiate anything, which I'm not going to do here. We haven't sat down to talk about salaries or job descriptions and responsibilities. I'm happy to sit down, so is Mr. Pilling, with the town administrator and the water selectmen. We wanted to actually do that. Last week, well, actually before last week, we wanted to do that in a special meeting, not necessarily executive session, but once we started talking salary, then we would be requesting executive session. So it was put off until the board said, we're gonna do this on open session. So here we are at 11th hour. And I would love to sit down and meet and talk about duties and responsibilities, salary, contracts, whatever we're gonna do. But I request just don't leave us hanging.
No, so I brought that up, Chairman Pires, because I would also be happy to do that. But right now, and I'm just speaking logistically, I can't call a meeting. So I just show up for the meetings when they're put together. So I'm happy to sit across the table from you and discuss this further. And I just want to point out, it sounds like Chairman Pacheco had said that there will be a placeholder. So we know that at the November 1st meeting, we're talking about some kind of a placeholder. If we want, and we are committed, and I think we're here tonight trying to get a consensus of where the board wants to go on this. But if it is the consensus of the board that this is the direction we want to take, we do have 2-3 months, or at least 2.5 months to possibly negotiate a contract, change the job description, et cetera. And I think if that's the will of us, if that's the will of the board, we can get it done together.
Yeah, we can get a placeholder in by the 9th, and then we can go from there. I understand the special town meeting is in November, is that correct?
November 1st.
November 1st.
And what are the dates for the actual warrants have to be written so the public can see what the warrants are? Do we know what that date is? Right now, we're putting a placeholder, but
Right on the,
September 18th.
I think it's the 8th of
right at the end
October.
of September, I believe, it was at the end, I believe once the town meeting warrant closes on the 9th, the Board of Selectmen, the meeting on the 15th will consider what articles, what special town meeting articles will go on the warrant. I believe we have to the end of the month, before it goes to the printer, so we have a little bit of time. From the point of negotiating a contract that we don't yet have the funding approved for, in my view, we didn't want to be presumptuous either. So one of the things that, just my opinion, I've wanted and I hope that we actually start tonight, is having a conversation about what the scope and what the duties of the health agent were. So then based on the scope, we have a scope in which really we could have a discussion about wages. Really, I mean, as my opinion, like Mr. Pius had mentioned, in terms of the hours that are funded now, in terms of the 28 hours, I believe all that 28 hours, 3 are dedicated to stormwater per week, and the other 25 are dedicated for all the other broad, all jobs and responsibilities of health agent. Based on, I think, what all of us know who are working the day-to-day and responding is, those current hours aren't enough, in my opinion, to deal with what actually, it has to be, essentially to deal with the scope that the health agent has currently. And I think that was a lot of the impetus for in my opinion, the conversation that started in the spring. In the spring, we also had COVID that was also in full swing at the time. We had the ability, based on the use and the fact that contact tracing was happening during that same time, we had the ability to charge against our CARES Act allotment for any additional funds. The state of emergency, as we know, ended in the Commonwealth on June 15th, but we have since, in the last few days, last week, hearing that the state is again having issues with the timeliness of contact tracing. So it raises the question, well, if the state it isn't handling, we, at the end of the day, through the Maven reporting system, have the responsibility to track what's happening here in our community. In any other normal time period, that responsibility is actually done and handled by a public health nurse. However, with a significant uptake in cases, again, that we're facing, we're having an issue there. So one of the things I want to actually check on is whether we can bill against that CARES Act allotment for that again. It represents a need that I believe are legally required to perform if the state is not doing it. But the fact of the matter is, we and the health agent and the Board of Health, in terms of all our departments, the role of the Board of Health and the health agent is probably the most broad. And where we are funding it in terms the hours that as compared to the scope of work and the need of work that is out there, we continue to have a challenge.
And that-
Oh, I just wanted to clarify.
Excuse me, Dr. Z. Excuse me. So, I noticed it's not, probably not fair to you, Selectman Hull, since you don't have it before you, but I've seen all the different wages of different towns. But I noticed that Berkeley wasn't there. What's the situation with Berkeley?
It doesn't matter, all the. Per diem. Oh, per diem.
Per diem. And the other thing, I'm leaning more towards increasing the hours. And then perhaps between now and the annual town meeting, contract and duties and all that kind of thing can be done, so that we have something to present to the public at the annual town meeting. We gave everybody, with the exception of the conservation agent, a 2% raise, and I would like to stick with that, but I do think at this point, what I'm thinking of, I don't want to vote tonight, of perhaps increasing the hours, because there's no doubt that he's busy at what he's doing, so.
Yeah, I'm not sure that, like, this is we had this discussion today at a earlier meeting. And it was brought up the fact that there is a possibility that we should explore about Mr. Pilling, if he's receptive to this, doing some engineering for the town of Dayton, because we're losing out on grants because of the timeliness of the submission of an engineer's plan. So I don't know if you wanted to touch on that, or, if we want to discuss that at all at this point.
So yes, thank you. That's one of the things as we discuss the scope and the function of the role and of the current health agent job and responsibilities. What as we know Mr. Pilling has brought to the table. Like Mr. Pius had mentioned, we actually realize a cost savings. Yes, there's been COVID for the last year and a half, and yes, there's been some plan review. Undoubtedly, that's been, that could have been a little held up. However, the fact of the matter is, we haven't had to pay an outside consultant for that, and we haven't had to rely on the timelines of an outside consultant that we have no way of controlling, who have also been extremely busy in the same time period. So the fact that we've been able, and Todd has been able to help us really do that as part of his day-to-day job and his function, has made us more efficient as a town. It's had a cost savings for a town, and it's also had the cost savings for residents as well. And the question is, we have a lot of accessibility work happening right now, where we just actually, in terms of the accessibility work, the drawings and engineering happening at the library as an example, we are paying a PE about $14,000 to come up with plans for that. And that's only on the library. And the question was if we could talk about or consider, how Mr. Pilling might be able to help perform those type of roles. It would be an increased responsibility for him, but it would mean more cost savings for the town. Those are the things that I think, frankly, it's healthy to talk about when we're talking about function and the duties and all the needs and all the responsibilities we have now and into the future as well.
Dr. Z, you wanted to say something before?
I think I want us to be very focused in this conversation. We have two issues that we're talking about, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for bringing up one of them. We have an increase in hours and/or an increase in the hourly rate. And I think the original request was for both. And I just want to remind the board that in the past years, there have been years where we didn't give anyone an increase in terms of our employees, except if they had an increase in duties or an expansion in their duties. So I just wanted to remind the board of that as well. And it does look like Mr. Pilling has had an expansion of duties. So I just want us to be mindful of obviously what's possible in terms of monies and taxpayer monies, but also what the prior decisions and the logic that the board has used in years prior when we have in fact granted salary increases when there was an increase in duties.
So, Tom, we had increased, last time we did was 5%, we had increased the hours because of the tracing and everything else. And I think some weeks we're working at least 40 hours, if not more. But right now, are you down to back to 28 hours? And it appears that covers some of that.
Thank you, Mr. First off, I just want to say thank you to Town Clerk. He's doing an phenomenal job from what we're seeing in the Board of Health office, and I appreciate all this help with what we do. Yeah, so as of the June 15th, it was over and I'm back down to the 20 hours. And for a peak there, when we were doing about 50 new cases a week, I was doing about 56 hours a week. I ended up putting in about 700 hours of additional time and overtime with the COVID pandemic.
Does the board have any other questions?
I have no further questions.
So we'll discuss this again.
So yeah, if I can make a recommendation, just actually, so we keep the conversation with the framework actually going, we have, as we discussed, we have a deadline of September 9th. To get the draft special town meeting warrant articles, or the proposed special town meeting warrant articles in. And as a result of the conversation and the light of the conversation we're having this evening, if I could ask or recommend of the Board of Health that they take everything that we've discussed in this conversation and then go back and have a conversation as the Board of Health and propose something as a starting point that could work for the Board of Health. So that when we come back on the 15th, we have a draft special town meeting warrant article that meets the warrant process, but we also have a start, a continued starting point of which we could base a further conversation and deliberation on. If that could work.
Works with me. It work for them.
Yeah, let's say we're open to discussions. It's just like the timing of things to make sure everything happens.
So this should be on the agenda for the September 15th meeting.
Yes.
We may have some answers, so talk about it. Selectman Hull?
When are the articles due in?
September 9th.
September 9th?
Yes.
And we're meeting September 15th.
Yes.
So how is that gonna work?
So it would work by the Board of Health. There would be a proposal coming, a written proposal in terms of any cost that reflects the functions that was that we're talking about tonight for the Board of Selectmen to consider together with the Board of Health on the meeting on the 15th.
Mr. Chairman. I heard Mr. Pires use the word negotiate. They sitting down, putting a proposal together, and then coming the 15th, either we're gonna be here a very, very long time negotiating, or we probably need some meetings in between them.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm sure we're going to, if it's a negotiation, there's a back and forth. And I don't think it would be fair, especially to the Board of Health, because I'm not gonna be rushed into making a decision without, one, some give and take,
Mm-hmm.
but also comparison. So I don't think it'd be fair to the Board of Health, they come in with a proposal on the 15th, and we say, no, we're not good with that.
We've wasted time. Yep.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, we've negotiated some other contracts, we didn't do it one night. So I like the idea of going back and putting together some, either a subcommittee, or negotiating with the town administrator during that period. So when we come in the 15th, we kind of are very close to a decision.
That's just want to say I am open to a meeting between the parties any day of the week, morning, afternoon, or night. I am not open to discussing salaries and so forth at an open meeting. It should be, it doesn't have to be executive session, it can be a session with us. If you would authorize the town administrator to negotiate with us, actually Todd, because I really don't want to be part of negotiations. It's his life, his salary, his contract, if we go with the contract. But, you know, that would probably save some time, and then our meeting, we can hold a special meeting in the interim also, to talk about where we're headed with this, and get the wishes of the Board of Health. But to continually put it off is not productive for anybody. And so I would ask that you give the town administrator the authority to move forward with discussions.
So if I can, Mr. Chair, we're talking actually about two separate things in two separate processes. We're talking about contract negotiations, and we're talking about meeting the deadlines that we have with the special town meeting warrant. And I don't have any problem doing anything that's been discussed. I just want to understand, so is it the hope of everyone involved to have a contract in place that will be funded through a special town meeting warrant article? Or is it the direction that we want to have these, that the funding in place before a contract is negotiated?
The former. We always do the former.
So then if it's not funded, we need to go back.
Correct.
Okay.
I wasn't answering for the board's wish. I was only answering what we have been doing. I will say this, though. I agree that we should move the ball forward. My understanding is the Board of Health knows exactly what the request is. They know exactly the justification. They know exactly what the hours will be, what the increase in the rate of pay request is. So I wouldn't see I wouldn't want us to go to the 15th to be the first time that we discussed it when they already know the specifics. So I think we should move the ball forward.
The only wrench that I could possibly see in moving forward in preparation and creating a budget is if through discussions, we do consider and approve, if he's willing, for Agent Pilling to do some engineering for the town, in which case would be a substantial salary increase for those duties. So I think we get the ball rolling, as Mrs. DeGraff said, and then we see what happens with it. Try to get this over with ASAP.
Well, I would like to have several options available to us on September 15th, different possibilities. I think it's kind of quick to negotiate a contract with all the additional duties that we may be given to Mr. Phillips before, by the time the warrants are supposed to be ready, so I'm having a little difficulty with that. I'm going to consider increasing hours, as I've stated before. And I would be interested in listening to different options, but I'm not sure I'm going to be prepared to vote on the other options before the special town meeting.
That's fine. Because we all know what an engineer gets an hour, I believe, so.
Yeah, I would like to see exactly what his responsibilities are going to be whenever we have an engineering job, and how that impacts.
This is why I'm sorry, discussion with the town administrator probably is the best move forward for now. We'll go from there. Yes.
Can I say a couple? So, yeah, first off, I want to say I can't do the job I do, the craziness and the speed and everything else without the good office manager, without a good board behind me. The board members, I know Tom spoke on what he did with the other board members, when they go to write regulations, they'll step in, they step in to do housing inspections, food inspections, et cetera, and they fill in where needed, they're always there behind me anytime we need any support. But that's part of the reason why we're here tonight, is, man, where does the selectman want to see the Board of Health? What do you want to be? You've got a list of all the duties that are in my job description, and all the ones I'm already doing that are not in my job description. You asked about expansion of programs. Well, I'm sitting here, I've already come up with 6 things that we're already looking to do above and beyond what I'm already doing now, which is already.
Excuse me, can we please shut off the cell phones, please? Or lower the volume?
Right.
Which is already far beyond.
Right.
Yes, I hear you, thank you.
So
Don't
it's been,
smile, you can't see it, but I'm smiling.
this is like 4 years for me, like today, that I've been here. We've come a long way in 4 years. I think the Board of Health has a long way to go and a lot more expansion to be done. But I think we can establish what the board wants to see me doing, then I can tell you how much money I think it's worth. Because right now you say, oh, you worth this, and then by the way, here's 12 more things to do. Like you say, now you get bogged down in the contract. And I know there's also a discussion whether it should be a contract or an employee agreement or whatever it is, because a contract is obviously a different animal, so.
Selectman Howard?
Mr. Chairman, at this time, I'd like to make a motion that we authorize Town Administrator Mike Mullin to sit down with Mr. Tillman to work out an agreement for a vote at the next meeting as to the direction we're going to go on this. Obviously, we need $1 value. I think by doing it that way, they can sit down and talk. If Mr. Mullin needs input from each of the individual Board of Selectmen, he can reach out to us through emails.
Is there a second?
So I would prefer, I think it should be the town administrator, but I think we've been more successful in terms of less volleyball back and forth when there has been a member of the board also there. So I would prefer if it's the town administrator and one member of the board.
So is that a second?
It's
It could be an amendment to the motion.
if Selectman Hull is okay with it, yes, I will second it with my amendment.
I just don't think, we're asking to have a contract to vote on in 4 weeks. And it impacts the Board of Health, it impacts the town, and it impacts taxes and everything else. And I don't think I'm going to be prepared to vote on the contract at that time.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can I ask you a question? So I totally
Is that the question you want to ask?
No, I have 2 questions. My second most important question is, I understand and respect your opinion that you don't feel you would be ready to vote on a contract. So can I ask you, if the actual contract is not ready by September 15th, and mind you, we have probably another month after that we could finalize it, would you at least settle for a revised job description for the health agent that includes the expanded duties we've all been alluding to tonight?
Well, I would ask the town administrator whether or not he feels we're going to be able to have something for us by September 15th.
So we need to have, whether it's a contract or an updated job description, we need to have something, in my opinion, that is going to inform how we go forward with a special town meeting proposal that we have to have submitted, and the Board of Health has to have submitted by the 9th. So, I mean, I think it would be reasonable to, even if we don't have the final parameters of a contract all nailed down, that by the 9th, we're gonna have the framework of a proposed contract, because those ideally are gonna be the aspects that form the request of a special town meeting warrant article. So I think having information as I just mentioned in that outline, whether it's a contract framework, if I could. I agree with you, I think, I forget who said it, but having all the particulars of a contract all nailed down by the 15th. Like I think we might be rushing things potentially. However, by the 9th, in order to submit a special town meeting warrant, we're gonna have to have a framework. A framework proposal ready, so we can have that ready, and the cost, any cost that will be associated with that framework will then go forward. If that makes sense?
That makes sense to me. And I only brought up the job description, Mr. Administrator, because the job description already exists. It's not a document that we need to create from scratch. It's just something we simply need to add to.
That's it.
So do you want to withdraw your?
No, I don't.
Motion? You want to keep your second?
Mrs. Brady, can you just read the language? Is it about the contract specifically, or is it just say like agreement?
It said agreement.
I'm fine if it's an agreement, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to box you in on the contract, or us.
So is the suggestion that we have a tentative agreement to vote on that night that may require further discussion that night before we finalize it? Is that the understanding?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, Selectman Zagrafis, we're in the middle of the motion here, I'm not sure where we stand with the motion. But he did suggest a member of the Board of Selectmen participate with the town administrator in any negotiations. I would respectfully request that myself or another member of the Board of Health also be present. So there is two from your side of the house and two from our side of the house. Although technically I'm part of management, so but I think it would be cleaner that way.
Well, I got a sense, and I may be incorrect, and I know Mr. Segarfis is going on vacation, that I want to see this issue resolved, so it does go forth at town meeting in a logical way, so that the voters are not confused. And I don't know, Mr. Pacheco, your schedule, but I'd be willing to serve on it if your schedules conflict. Or, I know Brett is going away on vacation. I don't know what your schedule is. Obviously, you're the chairman. If you want to do it, that's fine, but I would have no problem serving.
And I know that you will, so I think I would like to be part of that. But I'm on the motion. I'm going to let former Selectman Goulart speak only because she's the chairman of, I believe you're the chairman of the Stormwater. So I'm going to let her speak on it. Normally, I'll look into it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I sat in on the meeting this morning. The only thing you need for the 9th of September is a ballpark number. That can be done. Negotiations don't have to be finalized. You don't need a job description that's all approved and all of that. The main thing is we need the number, just like any town meeting, because when the discussion takes place, sometimes it goes up and sometimes it goes down. It also could be amended on town meeting floor, so that if the negotiations are settled, the amount of money in that warrant article is more than you need, then it gets reduced. So all of that work doesn't have to be done. The main thing is you must talk to the appropriate people, come up with a number. This is roughly what we're talking about for your job and your hours and all of this and all this other stuff. And if Mr. Filling has other duties that he wants to throw in the mix, fine. But it's got to be understood that that number is the max that's going to be on the warrant, period. So that's going to meet the deadlines you need. As I said, I was at the meeting today. The other reason I wanted to speak is because I am chairman of the Stormwater Committee. I rely heavily on him. We could not have done what we did in Taunton Medora Estates without him. I would also like, this may have already been discussed when I was outside the building. I would also like to get away with so many hours for stormwater and so many for the Board of Health, simply because it's up to him to prioritize the workload. And as we know, when we were dealing with that situation with the Taunton Conservation Commission, drop everything and do this, and he did it. Because I was teasing him, I don't want to hear 3 hours, you have got to do this because you're the only person qualified to do it. And we all know that going in, he was educating quite a few people over those 3 meetings, between his written documentation and the backup and everything else that was done. So from a strictly stormwater perspective, discussion of his duties, I'm not that much into his rate of pay, that can be worked out. I'm looking for, if you will, an overall job description that does not limit him. He's got to manage his tasks and his hours based on the needs. And if we have another episode like we just dealt with, whether it's Taunton or another community, and he has to drop everything, Board of Health, he's gonna have to drop it. Because he is an engineer, and he's not the town engineer. But when you need those kind of qualifications to make your case, he's the person that we've got on board. So I just ask that in conversations relative to his duties, I know what's going on, I'm willing to attend meetings, I want to be able to have input on his duties, because I want to make sure that the Stormwater Committee and its needs are recognized. Thank you.
So, Mrs. Wood, so you're saying that when we have this sit down and discuss the job description, you want to be part of that, is that what you're saying?
Yes, I would, as I said, as far as money goes, that's negotiations, that can be worked out. I'm not gonna get involved in that. I am looking for assurance that the kind of professional duties that he performed in the past, if we ever need him, and I'm sure we will, are going to be part of that. If, even without the case in time, and I'll describe it as that, he has to look at every stormwater plan that comes in here. And he working with at least 2 other members on the committee, and sometimes the fire chief or the police chief, whoever we bring in. His expertise and their combined expertise, they're the ones that tell me we can move ahead with this project. We've covered all of the issues. Everything that's needed is here. And so we go forward. I can't read those plans. I could look at it and see if there's a structure or some trees or some wetlands. But as far as what you need to know to say, this part of the plan is good, this isn't gonna work, as we saw with the time case. So that's the kind of things I wanna ensure that are gonna be in this.
I think it should be part of our conversation. Any further discussion? Selectman Hull?
No, I'd like to at this time move the motion. We have a motion on the floor.
Roll call, how do you vote? Selectman Hull? Dr. Z, how do you vote?
Before we vote, I don't think the motion included a Board of Health member or a Stormwater member. So do we all agree that it should?
I wasn't sure if you were that specific.
No, I wasn't.
I don't think it's mentioned in the motion as to who will actually participate in this.
Okay.
I think the town administrator, if he needs additional expertise in helping with his negotiations, should be allowed to do that. Whether it be a lawyer or Mrs. Goulart.
I agree. Check. Aye.
And Campuchico is an aye. We'll be meeting shortly.
Thank you.
While I'm here, I know COVID's not on the agenda, but I know you guys are meeting for another month. I don't know if you want an update from the last 3 days or whatever, if you want to talk about it.
Yeah, no, I was
like, want to wait till public input, whatever you want to do.
Well, actually, that's what I'm going to, but I do have the numbers, and obviously they've increased, but if you want to speak on those numbers, that's fine.
Well, I'll be very brief. So when I ran my numbers on Monday for the weekly report, we had 7 cases and 7 cases. Since I ran the report Monday, we've had 14 cases, and that was as of about an hour ago when I ran on. So obviously there's still on the uptick, but you're seeing the chatter on the news and everything else, so the numbers still are on the way up. We heard from a conference call on Tuesday that the Department of Public Health, they figure it's gonna be a couple weeks before they have their contact tracers trained, and so they can take cases back from us that they gave back to us. So right now, there's a couple dozen people out there that nobody's traced, so.
Selectman Hull?
I had a discussion with Mr. Pilling before this meeting. and I have a concern. We're a long way for our next meeting. Our numbers are going up. I'm concerned, even though the system has been suspended of green, yellow, and red, the science is there. It was a guideline. It is the best science and the best guidelines that we have thus far. And for the safety and well-being of the people of the town of Dayton, I would like to see if care funds are available, that one, Mr. Pilling, through overtime, through the CARES Act, as he did prior to the ending of the system, be allowed to restart contact tracing, should we enter the criteria that originally met the red. Second, and I'm not quite sure who we authorized to make this happen, whether it be Mr. Pacheco, Mr. Mullen, there's a task force, I understand, or the Board of Health themselves, to authorize Mr. Pilling to implement the same standards that we used before when the town of Dayton was in the red. This is discussion.
I just want to throw out that the red standard before was 25 cases in the previous 2 weeks. That was what the standard was. So just so you know the number.
Mr. Pilling, we're at what, 7 a week right now? So about half that?
No,
Well, if you go, last week was 7 and this week we're at 14 already, we're at 21 Wednesday, so.
Okay.
We have till Sunday, but the state does the numbers on Sunday, but they don't release until Thursday, because there's always that lag of getting cases reported, so.
We don't need to get it until the 15th, so that's why.
well, is the task, when is the task force going to meet again?
The task, the 8th, I believe, so, is that correct, with plan time?
Yeah, but we don't have another meeting, we could always schedule.
Oh, yeah, like, we're watching this, like all of us collectively, members of the task force, are watching this, following on a regular basis. And when we called the meeting, I believe on August 5th, it was an impromptu one based, like on the need, so like we don't, so my point is just because we don't actually have a scheduled meeting right here tonight, it doesn't prevent us if we needed to, have a meeting Monday, then we would meet as part of our due diligence.
Where we don't need, I'm sorry.
No, just as a point of information, for Mr. Pilling alone to take on this task would take away too many of his other duties. I insist, that I agree that it needs to be done. However, Mrs. Grassi, just for your information, has also been trained in contact tracing, so.
But Todd, you would indicate that the state's going to take this over in a couple of weeks, so.
Well, so the way it always worked was that the duty was upon each town to do their own contact tracing. The problem is that the towns didn't have enough staff to deal with it, and so the state created the CTC, the Contact Tracing Collaborative, where you could send any cases you couldn't handle to them. Sometimes it would be one at a daycare or somebody that was on a plane and you have to deal with the airlines and whatever, and you could send cases to them. What happened is when the cases went down, they got rid of all of those people. So it's going to be a couple weeks before they're up and ready to handle these additional cases. Right now, our nurse can't handle the cases, and I'm willing to offer, we step in at least until the CTC can get there to fill the gap, because I don't want a nurse to leave over something as silly as trying to keep up with 12 cases a day kind of thing, which she can't, so.
Selectman Hull?
I just want to clarify my point. What I'm asking for is 2 things. One, that we use the criteria we used before to declare we've entered the red zone. And 2, authorizing someone the authority to direct Mr. Pilling to do what he's got to do his job. If that means bringing in the office manager or his nurse to help him to do that contact tracing, so be it. The only drawback, and only Mr. Mullin, I believe, knows, is how much money is available for overtime. This is overtime. This isn't taking away from his regular.
Well, that was what we ran into last time, was the straight pay and the overtime pay. So CARES Act is good, money is good through to the end of this year, December 31st, 2021. I believe there's still hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting in the Dayton account. But what happened was last year is they only paid premium pay, so it's only above your regular hours, so it's only the time and a half. But because I'm only in 28 hours, from 28 to 35, I get paid straight pay, so the CARES Act didn't pay for it, and the town of Dayton had to pay for it. But it burned me out, it was a lot of stress. I am not doing it again for straight pay, and I only want to do it until we reach the point where the CPC or the nurse can handle it again. I don't want to do this for another 6 months.
I understand.
Can I ask a question about the town nurse?
Yes,
Todd, I totally, Mr. Pilling, I totally agree. It was a bit of a nightmare because, you know, we found out that from 28 to 35, we were on the hook for, and anything after 35, you know, was still a bit of a bureaucratic nightmare to submit the reimbursements and everything. So I totally agree with that. But why would the town nurse be unable to assist in any contact tracing if it were an emergency? Like, what would they be doing that would be more important than that?
So right now she works full-time, she has a full-time job. She has 3 towns that she supports part-time. And in a normal year, before COVID started, she would do 2 to 3 hours a month in taking cases for tick-borne viruses, tuberculosis, that kind of stuff. Obviously, I don't have any knowledge to deal with that stuff, so that's what the nurse was for. When we got to the contact tracing, and she's doing the one town that she had with 20 cases a week, and then you throw in 20 cases a week in this town and that town and that town, that's 120 cases a week. You don't have the hours to do it, and that's why she had to pull back. She just doesn't, same as me, I can't do it in my regular hours and do my regular job. Something's gotta give, so. We were the safety net for our nurse to get through. And then once they get through, then she picked it back up again, and she's been doing it for a couple months now. Before it's all of a sudden the last few weeks is when the numbers picked up. Does that answer your question, Dr. Z?
Thank you.
so if we don't take any action, I guess, then there's no contact tracing until the state. When do we anticipate that?
They told us on Tuesday that they figured it would be about 2 weeks to 3 weeks before they would have enough people there to do it. They said as of on Tuesday afternoon, they had 7,000 people in the state that nobody's called. So, and what they're doing is they're texting people now and asking them to call. They're doing it a little bit differently now,
Yeah.
but.
So, no,
Does the Board of Health need the Board of Selectmen's approval to implement any other aspects of, call it, we go into the grant? Or can they just do it on their own?
Well, what's gonna happen when we start getting there is the pandemic task force will make recommendations to the selectmen
Well,
about
we're not
building.
meeting until the 15th.
Right, no, I know, for building closures and all the rest of it. So, obviously, if the selectmen want to authorize the pandemic task force to carry on until the 15th, until the selectmen are back to make any of those decisions for face masks in town hall or closing town hall to the public, closing playgrounds, whatever you want. So
I
that's,
think we ought to do it the way we did it before. Have a regular schedule, in the event that something changes, we get into that so-called red zone. I'll have to call a meeting, and we will get together and we'll have to make a decision. We're not quite at that point yet. We're pretty close, but frankly, I'd be interested in hearing before we even have that meeting with the pandemic task force recommendation is before I call a meeting. I want it just to be, we're not public health, so.
No, I
I
don't
would like
want
some
to.
input from those people. Town administrator.
So if I come, Mr. Chair, I do understand that I agree with the chairman of the Board of Health and Mr. Howell and Mr. Pilling that, like the fact that we have this gap in contact tracing, right? Happening in contact tracing is very concerning right now. Last week we had, a phone call with Manic Community Health Center from Taunton. And they indicated that and we were just actually talking and discussed our frustration with the CPC about the timelines, and they, after the CEO made it, I'll actually recommend it to us that we reach out directly to DPH, and convey our concern to the DPH. I think based on what we know now, I think that's warranted, especially. The other thing, I have done is and been working on, I'm actually to no avail right now, but the state has also been funding regional public health nurse consortiums, at a pretty good clip, as long as there's communities, who are interested in working together. And I have reached out to a few local communities, one, who employs active public health nurse that we have now. And that community really didn't seem too interested. But as a result of the information that we learned earlier this week, there's also another community which a public health nurse also works for, and I did reach out to actually their town administrator yesterday morning. And I was playing telephone tag with him, and I did ask him how their community was dealing with this issue as well. So I'm trying to get a more actually regional view of how this issue is impacting us as a region as well. But I do think based on what we know now, a phone call and email to DPH about this tomorrow, as well as to the Executive Office of Administration and Finance, requesting about going back to utilizing our CARES Act funding, is imperative at this point, so. I just wanted to clarify that.
Just one more quick thing. At the last meeting, Ms. Hall had asked about some of the numbers and questions about some of the market budget. So for those that at home were wondering what that was about. So if you have a business in town, or a group home or something like that, where you have employees that work there, right? The employer may test their employees regularly. And when you get to work, they may test you there, and the testing kit has their name on it. And so those employees get reported with the work address, and then they come to us. Well, we got PO boxes, we got whatever, we have places at these group homes, and we went to them and said, hey, and found out the person lived in another town. We then, in the system, we changed them to that other town. We call the other town and say they come in anyway. But we did talk to these places to make sure that they weren't reporting their address, they were reporting the employee address to the future. So that was way back in October, November when we corrected that, but the numbers all got shifted to where they needed to be.
That was my concern also. You had mentioned that to me. Also, your concern about the group homes being counted differently. Right, that would have been picked up when you did your contact tracing over the cost. Yeah. I thought that was fixed. Any other questions? Do we take a vote already on this? On the motion to the town administrator deal with?
I don't think you got a second.
I thought.
I didn't think it was a motion.
No.
There's no motion.
Did Brett second?
No.
No, so I think it'll die for lack of a second.
Thank you.
If it's any consolation, I do understand what our charge is and what we need to be doing, so.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So, public input. So before I start public input, I saw 4 letters that came in yesterday. I did not see them Monday before it came up to the agenda. So they weren't able to be put on the agenda, but
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt. Just a point of order, is it possible to take the Aggie School item next so that Mr. Raymond can leave? Because it's not gonna take.
No, don't worry. Don't worry about me.
All right,
Yeah,
okay.
don't worry about me. But thank you.
that's a little way down the line.
Yeah, it is.
Let me finish up with public input and the announcements. So this office received emails that I only saw yesterday, so I will have an opportunity to read those letters. They weren't able to be included in the package because I only saw it yesterday, or the was set up by Monday. So the first one is from Tom Galucci. Good afternoon. I'm writing in regard to the abuse of language used by Selectmen Pacheco towards one of our fellow constituents, Mr. Robert Woods of North Dayton, during the August 11, 2021 Selectmen meeting. During public input near the end of the meeting, Mr. Woods was trying to ensure that Selectman Pacheco's exact anti-flag comments from the June 16th Selectmen's meeting made it into the public record verbatim. Mr. Woods quoted Selectman Pacheco. At that point, Selectman Pacheco lost control of his temper and began a tirade directed at Mr. Woods, beginning with the phrase, "You're too stupid to understand what I'm saying," delivered with anger and shouting. This is a clear violation of the code of conduct which Selectman Pacheco signed in 2020. I am asking for a disciplinary action to be taken, a public and personal apology from Mr. Pacheco to the people of Dyke and Mr. Woods in particular, and resignation of Mr. Pacheco as he demonstrated himself to be temperamentally unfit for the position he now holds. Thank you, Tom Bellucci. The second letter is from Robert Woods. Good day, Karen. After the way Chairman Ken Pacheco talked to me at the last Board of Selectmen's meeting, I'm asking for a public apology, and going forward, I expect him to never talk to any resident in the town of Dyke the way he talked to me. Name calling is not the way to conduct yourself in a public meeting, especially from the chairman of our highest office. The third letter is from Bill Mello. I attended the August 11th Board of Selectmen's meeting. Just after I left the meeting, I heard yelling through the door of the old town hall behind me. When I opened the door, I heard Ken Pacheco yelling and called one of the members of the audience stupid. Upon reviewing the video of the meeting on YouTube, I am appalled to find that Ken Pacheco was hurling this insult at Robert Woods. Mr. Wood is a highly respected resident of the town, notably a war veteran. To make matters even worse than that, the argument was a result of Ken Pacheco solidifying his position in regard to disparaging remarks that he made about the American flag at a previous Board of Selectmen's meeting. Mr. Pacheco claimed that the American flag was created only for whites, Protestants, and landowners, and that it did not represent all people. And he was using this as an argument for flying the LGBTQ flag at Town Hall. He refuses to acknowledge his statements, even though there is video and audio evidence of what he said. Ken Pacheco's behavior is a violation of Town of Dyke's Code of Conduct, Policy Number 12, which states to treat co-workers and members of the public with courtesy and respect at all times. Ken Pacheco signed this Code of Conduct on July 8, 2020, but apparently was not sincere about that signature. Elected officials cannot be allowed to abuse residents of the town or attendees at town meetings. This goes double for long respected members of the community who are trying to defend the American flag from disparaging remarks made by a selectman. I insist that Ken Pacheco apologize for yelling and insulting Mr. Woods and also apologize for what he said about the American flag. Mr. Pacheco's behavior, if it goes unchecked, will discourage the public from participating in town government. If we let this behavior stand, it sends the message to residents that it's okay for elected officials to yell at meeting attendees if the official disagrees with us. Please see that the town sets this right. It's from Bill Miller. And the last one that I saw is from Donna and Clay. Hi, Karen. After reviewing the above-mentioned town meeting video, I was appalled at Mr. Pacheco's behavior towards a private citizen. I have worked as an addiction nurse for over 10 years. I have been verbally abused, called horrible names and swears. I never once lost my temper or treated them with disrespect regardless of their behavior towards me. Mr. Pacheco, unfortunately, doesn't have a temperament to be in public position. He needs to apologize for his inappropriate behavior. Thank you, Don. Very easy. So I did lose control. I do want to apologize to Robert Woods for me calling him stupid. It was inappropriate, it was unprofessional of me. However, I think the residents in town also need an apology. He interrupted the meeting 4 times, and the 4th time he interrupted, he stated, "I know you're going to call me out of order." Other people were speaking, and he knows, as an elected official, he knows that you can't interrupt other people speaking. And I also would like an apology for the threat that you made to me, to meet you out in the parking lot. So I do feel that I lost my temper, and it was clearly inappropriate for me to call you stupid. That's my apology. Mr. Woods, you want to say anything else, or is anybody else for public input?
Robert Woods, 158 Chase Street. I accept your apology, and I apologize for calling you out in the parking lot. I'm a man of honor, and I don't hold a grudge. If I held a grudge, there'd be quite a few people in this room I wouldn't talk to this day.
I know.
Okay, so I do not hold a grudge, and I accept your apology. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Anybody else? Mr. Hull, will you be announcements, please?
So,
Wait, is there anybody, wait a minute, is there anybody on Zoom that wishes to speak? I can't see the names.
Not that I've seen.
so. The town of Dayton, public buildings are open to the public. The library is closed to the public, but continues to offer curbside service. The town of Dayton food bank distribution will be held next on August 21st, 2021, located at the Town Hall, 979 Somerset Avenue. And that'll be at the lower level. The Dayton Lions Club Cow Chip contest will be held on Saturday, August 21st at 2 p.m. at the Cow Case Pratt Memorial Field, 979 Somerset Avenue. Tickets can be purchased at Bujo Farms, 1522 Williams Street through August 19th. They'll also be selling tickets for the chicken barbecue. The Dayton Permanent Firefighters announced the 21st Annual Muscular Dystrophy Association Fill the Boot Drive, which will be held on both September 3rd and 4th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the intersection of Somerset Avenue and Center Street. The Dayton Historical Society is holding a walk in the cemetery event with the gravestone girls at the Dayton Unitarian Cemetery, 2036 Elm Street on Thursday, September 9th at 6 p.m. Learn about gravestone art, symbolic meaning, cemetery evolution, and more. A reminder, please license your dog. It is the law. Leash your dogs for everyone's safety. All dogs 6 months of age or older must be licensed yearly, beginning January 1st. All dogs must be restrained by a leash or chain when on any street or public place in town. If you have any question, call the clerk's office at 608-669-5411, option 2. The Cable Commission is in need of members. If you are interested, please call 508-669-6431, extension 100 for more information.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to go to agenda item number 10 on the new business D.
So moved.
Is there a second? I'll step down and second that motion. You vote? Aye. Campuchico is the aye. Selectman Dr. Z? It passes. So there's a request to use the field behind us.
For the soccer kids, yeah.
Do you have one of the Selectman Hull to look at the request?
Absolutely. I'd like to make a motion at this time.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to Bristol County Agricultural School, that we approve the facility use request.
I'll step down and second that motion. Any discussion? This has been done in the past, so this is not something new.
Yes.
In front of you, vote, Selectman Hull?
Aye.
Campuchico is an aye. Dr. Z?
Aye.
Aye. Been approved.
Thank you.
I need to sign off at some point, I think, but it's going to be. Let's go back to the town administrator's report.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a few updates, but most importantly, following up on what the chairman of the Board of Health had mentioned earlier relating to the West Nile virus. Yesterday morning, the Board of Health received a call up notification from the Department of Public Health that the West Nile virus has been found here in Dayton. And we did get information out to the residents that was conveyed to us directly from the Board of Health. But on our homepage, we did outline the precautions and ask, actually all of our Dayton residents to take precautions in light of us actually being notified, us being notified that we had a West Nile virus that was identified here in town. I am going to put a call in also to the Department of Public Health. I do want to, ask them about any spraying and the timeline for spraying that. Actually typically occurs every year, just so we all know, and understand that, and when I do, actually hear and get that information, I am, I will convey that, and I will convey that to everybody, but I do want to thank the Board of Health for notifying, us and all the residents of the town right away. And it's something that we'll continue to keep on top of and notify with any additional information updates. I do also want to update the board that a lot of work on the Brick Street culvert has been happening this week. The culvert, so the new culvert itself, I actually came into town yesterday. With oversized loads trucks, it was installed today. And tomorrow, I believe they're gonna finishing up at, actually leveling up both sides of it. On Bridge Street. Actually leading up to it, one of the things that did, actually have to occur was power. The 3 properties on Bridge Street did actually need to come offline, and the contractor worked with National Grid. I got those properties up on generator for about a day and a half or so. But I want to thank Mr. Ferry. He's been keeping right on everything. I've been working with him, and the project seems to be going very smoothly. And additionally, finally, our work continues relating to getting the modular trailer here for the Dayton Public Library. I've been in touch with the modular trailer company, as has Mr. Edgua. I talked with our representative actually at 7:30 this morning with him. I wanted to follow up and get a timeline. They are having issues that the company Erie from New Hampshire has been having issues with the transportation company, getting the modular company here. I did outline and convey to him that this was our highest issue of priority, that we needed to have it here. He understood it, and I'll be following up, and Jim will be following up every day until it's here. Question?
In your negotiations with them, this is really important. Are there any penalties if they don't meet their timeline?
I believe under the contract, it said initially they had 3 or 4 weeks. They had indicated it could be quicker, which I'm a big fan of expectation setting, and if it was gonna be actually a normal course of a timeline, ideally I would like to know about that at the outset rather than being told it could be here quicker. And if there are any issues, we'll pursue those in later contracts.
Are there any penalties for failure to meet that deadline?
To be honest with you, I'll check into that and to understand exactly where we are in terms of that timeline. I don't recall that specifically, but I can look into that.
So, Mr. Chairman?
Excuse me just for a second, so, Selectman Hull, I also agree with you. Unfortunately, I don't believe there's any penalty for any other contract. However, I signed a letter of intent that we should purchase or lease the mountain before we even voted on it, to get the ball rolling, so we get here sooner, because as we know, we have a deadline.
Yes.
And I'm really disappointed in the fact that it's not sitting out there right now. The town has done all the work, the prep work to get it ready, but you have a timeline, very serious timeline, and we're meeting on this tomorrow. We have a meeting with the library directors, Jim Aggie, I believe also, I think Tom Ferry's part of it, and library trustees, to see how quickly we can decide where the children's library is going to be, if it's going to be a lower level. Let's get moving on that. Let's not wait until we get the model. And then we're going to talk about how we're going to move the books and everything else to the office, so that by Labor Day, we got it going. Dr. Z, I'm not sure if you're able to hear me, probably not.
It's honestly a little bit hard with the mask. I'm not gonna lie. I apologize. I did get the gist of what you were saying, but I am gonna be that person that beats the dog dead here, and I just want an answer on if the vendor blows past the deadline, what recourse of action does the town of Dayton have? I think that question is important. Is there any recourse of action in a worst case scenario?
I would hope so, but I don't know that for a fact.
That concerns me because I feel like if that's, and again, I know we don't have it in front of us, so I know we need to look into it, but I was always raised to expect, like, plan for the worst case scenario. And so I would be concerned if there were no, what I'll call contingencies for a worst case scenario. I think that is really concerning. That means we don't have any cards to play.
I would ask the town administrator to look into that.
No worries. I appreciate
And
it.
hopefully we'll have a further update at tomorrow's meeting.
Understood.
And then we can share this with the board.
Thank you.
So you know what's going on.
Thank you.
Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
The next agenda item is to review, discuss, and act on the discussion of the flag bylaw committee. I'm going to make a suggestion to the board. I believe there's a petition asking to put on a warrant article regarding the flag. And I've seen the petition. I know what it's for. It's basically to keep the things the same. So my personal feeling is, I don't think we're a formless committee yet. Let's see what happens at the special town meeting. If that warrant article prevails, it's over. And if it doesn't prevail, we then inform this committee and we'll have something ready for the residents to vote on by ballot or whatever. We're still in the process. We haven't got an answer yet. We're still in the process of finding out the mechanics of that, how to get it on the ballot. If we have to go to a town meeting and then town residents approve to put it on the ballot, and then the residents take a vote on it on the ballot.
I'd like to make a motion that we table this, because it says here, review, discuss, and act. So I'd like to make a motion that we table discussion on this.
Selectman Hull, I am going to second this, but would you mind if I just asked a question before I do? Because there's no discussion on a table, so I won't be able to ask if I second it.
Would you let him ask you a question? Yes, you can ask a question, Dr. Z.
Thank you. I guess so since I have no insight into what the intention is behind the petition, is I felt like every party, regardless of where they fell on the issue, for or against other flags being flown or not, I felt like everyone agreed that it should go to a ballot vote because the most people could vote on it. So is the intention of the party petitioning that it will go to the special town meeting where there's a small number of people voting on it and then go to a ballot? Is that the intention?
I don't believe it is. I believe, for what I'm going to let Mr. Woods if he wants to speak, but I believe it's that the town, its property, county flag, the American flag, the POW, MIA flag, the state flag, the town flag, and all the veterans, all the armed forces flags. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, and it would be a bylaw.
It would be a bylaw, so.
Yes, sir.
My understanding is that at the special town meeting, the voters, the residents will vote on this. And if they approve it, it's done. It doesn't go to a ballot.
By the Attorney General.
Yes, but it doesn't go to a ballot. If the
Right.
residents
Okay.
It
support
will
it,
become a bylaw.
it will become a bylaw with the approval of the Attorney General. If it is not approved regarding your motion, I would say that we come back with this article again and to talk about forming a committee. But I think it's kind of moot to have it done now and have people working on it.
Correct.
When the residents may vote for this particular, he needs to have, I'm saying he because I think you're starting, Mr. Woods, but he needs to have 100 certified signatures. I think he's seeking more, but he needs to have 100 to put it up as a warrant article.
Okay.
So I suspect he's going to get the numbers. Obviously on September 15th, if he doesn't get it, then we can revisit this. We have to, but my gut feeling is he's going to get the signatures.
Yeah, I have almost 100 now.
I will second that motion, Mr. Chairman, to table.
Is there any further discussion?
No discussion on a table.
No, okay. You motion to, you table, you
I
motion.
motion to
No,
table.
I thought you
No, table.
were, okay. I'll take a roll call vote. Selectman Dr. Z
Aye.
and Campuchico goes aye. Any selectmen's reports and comments? Like I said earlier, our meeting tomorrow would be to discuss the library, but that's all I have to as far as reports. Dr. Z, do you have any selectmen reports or comments?
No formal reports. Actually, one thing. It's not anything related to the town, but I did want to let you know that my vacation has been postponed. So if we need to have a meeting somewhere between when I was going to leave on the 25th of August through the 8th of September, I will be around as a last resort.
And I would consider that the last resort because we've changed the schedule a couple of times. And based on that schedule, some of us may have planned our own time away, so unless there's an emergency, and there may be an emergency, I don't anticipate calling another meeting. Right now it's scheduled for September 15th.
I just want you to know I'm available. There was a discussion earlier about, oh, well, we're going to go 3 weeks without a meeting. So I just wanted you to be aware that I will be around if you need to call a meeting.
It's actually 4 weeks.
Oh, okay.
In light of the potential of at least 2 emergency situations, I totally, yes, I'm on that here.
So if we need to have a meeting, let's see what your schedule is, let's see what Dr. Z's schedule is, and obviously I'm looking at my own schedule.
Absolutely.
Make plans. Thank you, Dr. Z, for that.
Thank you.
You have a selectmen's report?
Well, I actually have 2 things. The Water Commission District, they did not meet. Their meeting was postponed. And next Thursday, the Bristol County Board of Trustees will be meeting for their annual financial meeting to set the budget
Next Thursday.
at 6 p.m.
Thank you for that. Next agenda item is new business. Review, discuss, and act on the appointment of Timothy Ryan as an at-large member of the Community Preservation Committee.
Mr. Chairman, I motion that we appoint Timothy Rhines as an at-large member to the Community Preservation Committee.
Second. Mr. Ryan has been the chairman of the CPC in the past, and it's good to see him back. He's very knowledgeable about CPC. Any discussion? If not, I'll take a roll call vote. Selectman Hull?
Aye.
Dr. Z?
Aye.
Campuchico is also on that. The next item is review, discuss, and act on the appointment of Matthew Powers Jr. as a constable. We were presented basically with some information regarding him as well as a list of those that would, he needs to have a list of those that say he's of moral character, and he's provided us with that list. Is there any question about this before I ask for a motion?
Mr.
Yep. Dr. Z, yep.
Do we have any idea, maybe this is for Mr. Administrator, if we appoint Mr. Pollock as a constable this evening, how many constables would we have total? We had quite a few in the past. I know we pared it down.
I don't know what we have for
I believe we have 8 or 9.
Okay, thank you. No further, I don't have any further questions.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Matthew Pollock Jr. as a constable to the Dayton Police Department.
Any discussion? If not, I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Aye.
Dr. Z?
Aye.
Campuchico is also on that. The next agenda item is Barcode Trail link to Old Somerset Avenue. I noticed what we've got on this is regarding an email that was sent back on June 7th, 2017. Anything more?
Yeah.
Update on this?
If I could, Mr. Chairman, just really to provide that context, I believe, for like a while now, there, has been a desire by the town to look into land, actually not owned by the town on the Broad Cove Trail. And as a result of the conversation that the Board of Selectmen had with the Trails, with the Trails Committee at the end of last month, I know there was renewed interest in perhaps looking at that. And the chairman of the Trails Committee has been in touch with Mr. McKeon, who was part of earlier discussions as was trying and working with us on behalf of the Board of Selectmen to see if there could be an opportunity for discussion. And I know in talking with Mr. McKeon, he has expressed that if the board would so like, he could reach out to the party and see if there could be an opportunity for discussion.
Any questions regarding that?
Actually, a question and statement. I'm not quite sure, it says in the agenda to act, and I don't quite understand what we're being asked to act on. If we have Mr. McKeon work to negotiate this, or that we support the Trails Committee and their negotiations with him? I'm not quite clear what.
So I apologize. The ask for what the board will be acting on is to allow Mr. McKeon to reach out to the owner of the parcel and to see if there's any interest. That would be the act, and then if there is, or anything, all that information will be reported back to us.
An actual statement. I commend Mr. McKeon. I believe he is no longer working or involved in government in any committees. He's retired. And for him to reach out and put extensive amount of time and willing to volunteer to negotiate this, Mr. McKeon should be commended, thanked for his efforts. This is a very important piece of land for the successful completion of that trail. And I'd like us to reach out to him and thank him for his efforts.
So I'll entertain a motion.
I have a question.
Yes.
I didn't see his hand up. Yes, Dr. Z.
I agree that this would be a really big boon for the town if we were to acquire this link. But my understanding of where the situation was left off, and I do actually, if it's okay, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to ask Mr. Woods a question, because I believe he might know the property owner and be familiar with the situation as well, meaning the town trying to acquire this link. But I thought the way the situation was left off was that the owner did not want to be contacted by the town anymore. And I don't know if anyone in the audience or anyone on the dais has any more information on whether that has changed before we reach back out to them.
So, Mr. Woods, do you have anything to add to that? I don't know what your knowledge is on this, so.
And I don't mean to put you on the spot, Mr. Woods, but I think you do.
I know, thank you. I happen to know the landowner very well. And as Brett's aware, and Mrs. Goulart stepped out, there was a lawsuit. Mr. Mello won. The town disregarded him. He was at a meeting when the Boy Scout wanted to do this trail. He said, my family owns this property. He provided documents and he provided pictures of his family farming the land over 100 years ago. But the town totally ignored this man, put the trail through anyway. And it took 4 or 5 years of land court, but he wanted land court. So I saw it on the agenda today and I reached out to Mr. Mello. Mr. Mello does not want to talk with the town of Dayton, but his attorney would. So that's where he's at. I mean, he was really wronged in the first place, and he was insulted. And I don't want to elaborate anymore as to who was involved, but you could reach out to his attorney, but Mr. Mello is looking for a lot of money. And he'd sell it all to you if you got enough money. But you're gonna be up against a rock and a hard place. That's all I know.
Something else, I'm not sure, you have a question for
Mr. Woods.
Yeah.
Mr. Woods. Mr. McEwen, does he ever?
That Mr. McKeon, he is no longer a resident of the town of Dayton.
Well.
He's a great man, he's done a lot for our town, but
Yeah, I believe he's a resident in another town, but he still has a home.
yeah, oh yeah,
He's not a voting resident.
right.
Does he have a friendship with Mr. Mello? And he's also an attorney, so would he be willing to?
I don't know if he has a friendship with him. I don't know if you know Mr. Mello. You know Mr. Mello.
Yes, I do. But I know that there were issues.
Yeah.
But I also know, like yourself, that there are certain people in the community that Mr. Miller has respect for. And he's also seems to be open an olive branch or a light.
I'll talk to him again tomorrow.
For negotiations through his attorney, where Mr. McKeon is an attorney. I just thought, especially if this McKeon's willing to do it on his dime rather than the town's dime.
You know, while I'm up here, right, let's talk about Boy Scout projects, because they come before you all the time.
One came, I believe, last.
Right. But like a few years ago, somebody wanted to put one on Susan Circle. And the whole entire neighborhood showed up, was against it. But the Board of Selectmen at that time still granted that Boy Scout permission to put that park there. And like all the neighbors said, you know, that floods a lot. The people on the Board of Selectmen back then says, oh, we haven't had a big flood in a long time, so this Boy Scout built a really nice park. And the next year, a huge flood came and took it all away. So you really need to listen to the residents and the taxpayers and the abutters. Because every single abutter up there on Susan Drive showed up, was against it, and it was still allowed that Boy Scout to do it. And that park is no longer there, it's got washed away.
Just for the record, we weren't board members at that time. So,
Just like that trail never should have went through there, but it went through there, and now there's a fence, so. You know, before we do any more big Boy Scout projects, let's do our homework.
Now, on this one,
I'm gonna work on that tomorrow. If he's willing to make a deal, I'll let you know. So I mean, it's a beautiful trail, and I like it myself.
so perhaps we can put this on the agenda for the September 15th.
do we need to make a motion?
Are you open?
We want to make a motion to continue this to September 15th.
Yes.
So
Is there a
moved.
second?
Oh, second, yes.
Any discussion? If not, Selectman Hull, aye. Ken Pacheco is an aye. Dr. Z?
Aye.
Mr. Woods, thank you.
Thank you.
The next agenda item is to review, discuss, and act on community compact cabinet program. Town Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to bring to the board's attention, a letter on backup information that, we received, the town received, from, the Lieutenant Governor of the Commonwealth on the 9th of August. We are eligible, to apply for the community compact grant programs again. In terms of the best practice programs, and then the outline in the packet also lays out the IT grant programs, the efficiency and regionalization grant program, and a new municipal fiber grant program. And you will note that there is an upcoming deadline for the IT grant program. But the the efficiency and regionalization grant program, that application period doesn't open till actually January of 2022. And the municipal fiber grant program actually opens later than that, in terms of March 15th, 2022. What are being accepted on a rolling basis, which actually we are eligible to apply for again, is the Community Compact Best Practices Program. And I printed out a whole outline of all the best practices that have been established by the Commonwealth. And there are a range of them in every category. We have a little bit of time because there is a rolling grant application process for us to really talk about this. But I just wanted to actually raise a few for you that I've been looking at just for the board's consideration. Actually, one is in the financial management best practice, and that would be to develop and utilize a long-range planning forecasting model that assesses both short-term and long-term financial implications of current and proposed policy programs and assumptions over a multi-year period. in light of the financial management review, that is gonna be starting in October, this could be one aspect that could really build off that. Could really let us, especially as we move forward with the capital planning, really help us plan forward where we're going financially. There was also, in the public health best practices, building off of what we talked about earlier this evening, there's a best practice to assess the challenges posed by recent public health crises and identify an opportunity for building additional public health infrastructure and staff capacity. I thought that could be helpful based on our discussions as well. And finally, I want to have a conversation with Superintendent Ferry about this as well. But in terms of a transportation best practice, there is a best practice to develop a pavement condition index that rates like our street and roadway conditions as well. So those are the things that I have identified as possible opportunities so far, but I want to be able to provide an opportunity for the board to weigh in and comment and share any feedback on thoughts as well.
So my question is, did we apply for one of these last year? Do you know?
It wasn't last year, if I may, Mr. Chairman. It was the year before you arrived. It was right in 2017. And we did do best practices. I think some of these are new, like the municipal fiber is new.
Yeah.
But what we did in 2017 was the open space and recreation plan, so we can conserve and respect our open space. Right to farm, and we created an agricultural commission. And then we also invested stormwater management. And I just want the audience and the people watching to be aware that there were also financial implications and financial gains for the town because we implemented these measures. So because the Stormwater Committee is rocking and rolling and working on the stormwater bylaws with the health agent, who is also the stormwater agent technically, we're able to bring in big permit monies through stormwater management permits and things like that. So it has been advantageous. To answer your question, Mr. Chairman, it was 2017, but it took us a couple years to get it done.
As it says, you can, I thought we did, it says you can apply if you apply in 2020, fiscal year 2021. Selectman Hull, do you have any questions? No. Cassini, do you have any questions?
Mr. Administrator, I apologize. I couldn't hear every best practice that you had mentioned, but I wanted to run something by Selectman Hull in particular. And it's just based on what I know your interests are as the selectman. And I think one best practice that the board might be able to agree on, and I'm not asking for an agreement tonight. I think we need to review these thoroughly because there are a lot. But I did notice under housing and economic development best practices, one of the best practices is to create an economic development plan that engages diverse stakeholders, leverages local and regional economic strengths and assets, encourages innovation and entrepreneurship, and/or promotes workforce development planning and implementation. I think that, and I can't see your facial expression, so I hope you're smiling, but I think that is something that would really benefit the town. And I think as we reinvigorate and revitalize the development and industrial commission, yes, I think that they may want to play a role in an economic development plan as well. And I think that might be something that everyone can agree would benefit the town.
Could I just respond through you?
Yes.
Dr. Segarfis, I totally agree, and excellent idea. And it's something we definitely will focus on. We have a lot of work to do with that committee. It needs to reorganize, and it needs a focus. And this certainly would be something beside reorganization. It would certainly be a very meaningful task. Thank you.
So we don't have to act on this right away, but to give us a thought. I hope everybody's reviewed the information that we did before the meeting.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
do you want us to, so what we did, I can only speak to, and I see Selectman Goulart in the back. I can only speak to what we did the last time, and I think what we did was each selectman picked one, and that was and then that's how we arrived at the 3. So I don't know if that's what you want to do for maybe September 15th, if you think we'd have enough time. What are your thoughts?
my concern is that we're not gonna meet for nothing, we're gonna have a lot of stuff on September 15th, but it's worth considering. Is that what is happening in the past, Mrs. Goulart?
I believe so. We're talking about the industrial development.
The best practices for CCC, Selectman Goulart.
Sorry, I was out of the hall for a minute. Yes, when I brought that in, we had this giant spreadsheet, like a menu. And it was Selectman Cronin and Dr. Z. When I said, hey guys, what do you think? They were all on board. So we spread it out and we looked at areas we were interested in. And each selectman, because Dr. Z picked the agriculture and came up with a commission. Obviously mine was stormwater. And Selectman Cronin picked what he thought. But that's how we did it. We only had to file one project for best practices, but we were so enthusiastic, we decided to go with all of them. And they got approved. But we only needed one to get on the, let's say, the good list for grant funding. Yes, he's right, that's exactly how we did it.
And we've been approved for all 3?
All 3 of our projects got approved, which I think when the Lieutenant Governor Leo came to award us the certificate that day, most places don't file 3, they do the minimum, and no one had done agriculture. So she pointed out that that was the first time anyone had ever submitted for a best practice, the formation of an agricultural commission. So that was another, certainly a feather in Dr. Z's cap, but also in the town.
Thank you. I agree, we should have, if that's what's been done in the past, then we should have the September 15th meeting come up with our own ideas, and I believe Selectman Hull's probably already picked his.
And I noticed here that one of the best practice recommendations, prepare a capital improvement plan for those community needs, so that if you wanted to grab that, it'd be huge.
That's really important. And in fact, before Town Administrator Mullen arrived, I had put a capital improvement plan as sort of a goal for the capital outlay committee. So that would be directly in line with things that we have identified as being important for the future of the town. So I totally agree.
So I'm leaning towards the financial help that's mentioned in here, since I'm on the capital outlay committee, so that's what I'm leaning towards. So we'll see how this goes.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just an addition. So expanding our public education program was the best practice for stormwater. And that's the project that when we got it approved, we filed for a grant and we initially got the $2,000 to use for the bags, the blue bags and grippers. And because they thought it was a great idea. So it was almost like we got approved and that funding, we got the approval. We waited for the money, but we got the approval. So that was beneficial financially. Small amount, but we still got it.
Thank you for that. So we can put this on the agenda for September 15th. Any other questions about this? If not, we'll go to correspondence.
Administrator.
This is, this correspondence, I got CC, but this is for our conservation meeting, Lisa Carabelli. As a resident of Dayton for 43 years, I am writing to convey the opinion that the town government has made a mistaken decision. Do you mind talking about the different math one? As a resident of Dayton for 43 years, I am writing to convey the opinion that the town government has made a mistaken decision to allow a solar farm to destroy 8 to 10 acres of our local forest on Pine Street. The trade of trees for solar power is not an intelligent one, considering that we are dependent on trees for oxygen, and also considering that the town permits more and more housing development to destroy forests as well. There is much natural discussion of such practice as not green. Indeed, open land is the best area on which to place a solar farm. Land where there may not be a need to plant trees for the sake of breathing. I asked the town to take up the discussion in an honest way of what constitutes actual green practices, including the temptation of monetary gain for tree destruction. The town resources are precious to us all, and this is from Dr. Mary Bell Hopkins. And Lisa did respond to it. I'll read her response to this. Good morning, Mary. I apologize for the delayed response as I was away last week. I do not disagree with you about the fact that clear-cutting forests for solar farms is not green. In fact, I have said on more than one occasion it would seem more beneficial if we could locate the solar farms and already cleared spaces, parking lots, etc., and redevelop those. From a Conservation Commission perspective, if a solar project is proposed and it meets all of the wetland performance standards, as well as the Town of Dayton's Conservation Commission bylaw setbacks, and if the commission determines that the activities which are subject to the permit application, which will result therefrom, are not likely to have a significant individual or cumulative effects upon the resource area values protected by the bylaw, then we are obligated to approve it. Unlike housing developments, the town requires solar proponents to put up a bond so that once the town lease is over, the property will be reforested. Additionally, it appears that the state incentive for solar farms are being redirected to discourage state funding on properties that are wooden. Also, I know the state's solar program pays solar companies less for power than generated by panels sitting on land that used to be forested. Thanks for voicing your concerns. Sincerely, Lisa Caledonia.
Mr. Chairman, can I respond to that from the start,
Yes,
please?
Yep.
I agree. I don't think anybody is happy with clearing forest lands, whether you're gonna build houses or solar farms or anything else. However, I think we have to point out a few things. First of all, most of the solar farms have gone on chapter land, which means they may have been landlocked, or they were fallow farmland or something else. The taxes on them are half of what the normal taxes would be. So some of them have gone on fallow pasture land, but a lot of them have grown up into trees. Yes, that has happened. All of these projects come before the Stormwater Committee, and we enforce the bylaw and the regulations. I mean, you've been at a meeting anyhow, and anybody can watch them. It's not an easy process. It's not a blank check and stamp them and you're welcome, you know. An important fact financially, economically, is solar farms do not add children to our schools. We have no control over 40Bs or other approved housing developments. And I'm not anti-children by a long shot. By the same token, we're all concerned about providing facilities and our taxes. A solar farm gets minimal services from the town, which would be police and fire if needed. That's why we're so strict about building the road into it so that the public safety can access it if they have to. We don't have to build infrastructure. They build the roads, anything they need, they must pay for. And it has to be built to the standards of the appropriate people here in town. Building inspector, highway superintendent, health agent, whoever. We get tax money. We negotiate pilot agreements. With the help of the Department of Revenue, their guidance, as Attorney Gay said at the town meeting, this is the way to go. And as you know, the ones that we've had approved, they're front loaded. That means the highest money is paid to the town, and we will be asking the town, how best should this money be, whether you set it aside in special accounts or whatever, right? So we're planning long term, we're looking down the road. This is not short-sighted at all. And as Mrs. Caledonia said, there are decommissioning bonds. If they don't take down the structures when we're all done, that bond will be pulled. We'll take it down, we'll use the money to return the property to as near original condition as possible. So this isn't just, you know, it's not like strip mining, quite frankly. There are plans. The other thing is, yes, people have complained about this town is allowing these solar farms. However, this town, both through the Board of Selectmen, through the Conservation Commission, and a town meeting, more than one town meeting vote, has acquired land for open space and recreation. Conservation Commission now owns most of Broad Cove. Now, we acquired the property on Brook Street, the Segregated River area. We, Conservation acquired Council Oak 2 land. We accepted a gift from AstraZeneca of 3 lots that are treed and bushy and brushy and whatever. Again, open space recreation. It's not like we're allowing things to be demolished or whatever and just not doing anything. When property comes available, a board, a commission, or whatever, if it's coming out of chapter, has to notify the Board of Selectmen. We're interested in that. So that's another thing. The other thing I will point out is, yes, there has been opposition to solar farms, and Mrs. Caledonia is right. If they meet all of the requirements, you can't deny them. But I will also say, the public, if it really wants to, does have a say, because I remember it was probably around 2014 or 15, there was a large solar farm proposed for the side of Richmond Hill that would be most visible from Main Street. The people in the area literally rose up and went to the planning board, and they expressed opposition to the trees and the effect of the wildlife and the general life of the people that live on Richmond Hill, on Estabrook and the other road up there. It did not get approved, okay? So, I don't want people to think that this is a willy-nilly thing and anybody coming through the door with a solar farm proposal that we're saying, okay. But, other than the fact that it's clean energy, there are boards and commissions and employees in this town who have taken action to protect the interest of the town, keeping in mind, we don't like to see them all cleared, but there is a plan in place and it is definitely benefit. So I just put that out there. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, to add on to what Mrs. Goulart said, Dayton is quickly developing a reputation as a leader in solar farm management. We have some really good bylaws and requirements for people who are trying to put in solar farms. And those bylaws really take into consideration appearance and minimizing the impact in the neighborhoods. Another thing that solar farms don't do. In South Dayton, water is a major issue. Solar farms do not tax our water system. It's already taxed. It's mentioned in the report that once the lease is up, the land is reforested. So those trees are replaced. And lastly, land that goes to a solar farm, more than likely, if it wasn't approved for a solar farm, would probably be approved for a development. People don't just give up land for no reason. They usually want to make some money out of it. So they have an intent to make money. They have a choice, a development or a solar farm. There is an individual in this town who recently put together an agreement that helped sell me the idea of the pluses of solar farms. And many of the things that I've expressed today, this individual, he hasn't started building yet. I saw a lot of positives that he pointed out. And one of the things that he said was, yeah, I have two choices. I can put a solar farm in, or I can put a development in. But the one thing that wasn't going to happen, I wasn't going to just leave that land vacant, because I need money for my future generations of children and grandchildren. And I thought it would minimize, and this is the very important part, A solar farm would minimize the damage to the town in regards to services, tax dollars, and also to the environment.
Thank you. Dr. Z, did you have your hand up? No?
I think I just wanted to say that I think Selectman Hull really pinpointed all the important parts on the issue. I think we all agree, especially you and I, Mr. Chairman, with the sentiment certainly outlined in Ms. Ball-Howkin's letter. But I just think, just my experience and certain things that have happened over the 5 years that I've been here, I think the choice often isn't between a forest and a solar farm. The choice is often between a solar farm and a development, or a solar farm and a house. So yes, we all want to maintain our forest, but the town has no control over what a private resident wants to do with their land that they owe. We give incentives, right? The state certainly gives incentives with things like Chapter 61A and Chapter 61B and all that. But the second someone wants to sell their land, all bets are off. They've made a decision that they want to sell the land for a profit. That is their right as a landowner. However, I think just we can all agree that if we're going to pick between a development or a solar farm, we should pick the solar farm. And I understand people don't like to see them. But I will say, I do think the zoning board and the planning board have done a good job in enforcing the restrictions, giving the restrictions, but also beefing up the bylaws that govern things like the solar farm. So I agree with the sentiment, but often the choice is not the choice that's presented in their mind. It's a choice between more students in the school or a solar farm. So those are the choices we get elected to make, Mr. Chairman. As you know, choices.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just one other comment. When I talk pilot agreement, those taxes are on the personal equipment, meaning the solar panels and everything they're connected to. The person who owns the land that was in chapter at the lower rate, it comes out of chapter, it gets developed, they are now being taxed real estate at the commercial rate. Those taxes go into the regular tax receipts accounts that help fund the operation of our town. So there are two taxes involved. So there's a gain in the tax that we receive on the property also.
I think the concern that she has, and quite frankly, few of us have, is that the development on Pine Street, that it was clear cut, and it was forest before, and all of a sudden, but the trees are all gone, so it's kind of shocking. I prefer solar farms on farmland. That's not, I think, one of either you or Selectman Hull mentioned that, follow federal land. But we don't have that choice. That's not a, I thought at one point the bylaws from the state for solar farms was that you can only deforest a certain percentage of the land, but I guess that's not true. I wish it would come up with something like that, but it's out of our control. It's a benefit to the town, solar farm versus a housing development, but it's still tough to look at.
Right, and as I brought to you maybe a month or so ago, the legislation that MMA was talking about for reforestation, that's still out there, and it's gonna be pursued. And the good thing is, when solar farms go away, the land is there. It's not like it's developed and it's not gonna be anything except, whether it's a housing development or anything. The land is now freed up again for use, and it can go back to farmland, it can go back to lumber, whatever. So that's another plus.
The next agenda item is, we received a email or a letter from Jessica Daly. Good afternoon. Please use this email as resignation from the Open Space and Land Use Committee. Respectfully submitted, Jessica Daly. I'll entertain a motion to accept it.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the resignation from Open Space and Land Use Committee of Jessica Daly.
Is there a second?
I will second that, Mr. Chairman.
Any discussion?
Yes, I just wanted to thank Mrs. Daly. I was fortunate enough to work with her on the Open Space Committee as the liaison to the Board of Selectmen. She was very, very pivotal. I think this puts the Open Space Committee back into not having a quorum, unfortunately, even though we did get the open space and recreation plan done. However, I don't know if we want to highlight them again or put them on the agenda, but we had wanted to work on an open space residential design bylaw, and we were going to work on that with other relevant committees. So that stinks now.
Selectman Hull?
I have a question, because I may run into the same problem with the industrial development.
Mm-hmm.
How can you get new members on board if you don't have enough members to have a quorum?
Just advertisement.
No, the approval process.
Oh. That's a good point.
Can they,
Chicken
if
or the
they
egg?
don't have a quorum, can that committee be bypassed and come to the board for our approval?
That's a question for the town administrator, I guess. I would think that they would be able to come to us.
Yes, I would say, yeah, because
Somebody would indicate that they're interested in a particular committee, there's no quorum, it will come to us, I assume. The committee members can have input, but we will make the final decision, I would think.
I'll give you an example, I won't mention names. I hear about the open space committee, that may put them below their needed number for a quorum. So they can't recommend someone. But
Correct.
I do know from my trying to recruit people to become more involved in committees, that there is an individual who is interested in applying for this committee.
Mhm.
So they could submit an application
Absolutely.
to Mrs. Brady,
Absolutely.
and then we could vote on
Would
it.
it be brought to our attention? The committee.
Yes,
is
and
also-
the board of selectmen are the appointing authority anyways.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, so the fact that, that a committee is currently unable to meet as long as the board of selectmen as the appointed, as long as the board of selectmen as the appointed authority approves it, it would be fine.
Because like I said, I've been asked to do a presentation, and I've kind of been reluctant to come before this board to do it. Simply because we haven't been able to have a meeting, because we haven't had enough people for a quorum.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to get some members on board, and I do have some that are interested, but I didn't have an understanding of a vehicle to get them approved, so we can re-get those committees done.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Just point of order, Mr. Chairman, or just clarification. The recommendation thing we started, that really was started more when we had certain committees that were always had enough members. There were usually never any vacancies. With the open space committee, it's we ebb and flow between these periods of, because the open space plan took 7 or 8 years to make. As you know, life happens and people come and go. So I think that I guess just to answer your question, Selectman Hull, we are not going to be choosy. We have a lot of new members on the open space committee. In fact, I've only been there a little, maybe a year or less. We will take anyone. We're happy to work with anyone. We're happy to show anyone the ropes. We can't make a recommendation, obviously, or they can't make a recommendation, but we would literally take anyone. We're happy to have anyone on board.
No, thank you.
So perhaps at the next meeting, and all having all this stuff to September 15th, we should go down the list again, which we've done in the past of all the committees and the number of people that they need to have put on that committee, or that seeking to be put on that committee. So I'm going to call for a vote on this. Selectman Hull? This is on the resignation.
Mhm.
Dr. Z?
Appreciation, aye.
And Campuchico is also mine. The next item is, looking for my glasses, it's on top of my head. I apologize for the delay in my response. Please accept this email as my resignation from the Untitled Rights Commission. Thank you, Lisa Miner. She had actually left a few months ago, but she never submitted her resignation, so I appreciate the fact that she's now submitted the resignation. I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I motion that we accept the resignation of Lisa Miner with thanks and appreciation from the Human Rights Committee.
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all those, roll call.
Aye.
Dr. Z,
Aye.
and Campuchico is also an aye. The next, agenda item is acknowledgements, recognition of anonymous donor who paid for the employee Christmas in July breakfast. We had, in the past, we've had a Christmas celebration, holiday celebration for the town employees, and the selectmen would come up with the money to provide the breakfast for them, and they'd be here for a little while, and they'd do shifts. They wouldn't leave their department empty. Because of the pandemic, we weren't able to do this past December of 2020. Mrs. Goulart, former selectman, Mrs. Goulart has suggested that we do it in July of this year, which I thought was a good idea. I give her credit for coming up with the idea, it wasn't my idea at all. And we did that. In July, we had a breakfast for the town employees, and we were going to all be given a figure as to how much it cost each individual. Well, somebody apparently donated all the money for the Christmas in July breakfast. It's anonymous, so I don't know who it was. But we want to acknowledge and appreciate the fact that they did this. So, thank you, whoever it is.
Yes, thank you.
Minutes. Approval of the Board of Selectmen's regular meeting minutes of March 30th, 2021. I understand you weren't a member of the Board of Selectmen, so I know even if you reviewed it, you won't necessarily know whether those minutes for March 30th were correct. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of March 30th, 2021.
So moved.
I'll step down and second that. Any discussion? If not, I'll call for a roll call of the vote. Selectman Hull?
Present.
Dr. Z?
Aye.
And Campuchico is also an aye. Approval of the warrants. Do you have the, for this?
Yes, I do. The warrant for August 18th, 2021, 7A-22, $100,875.21. Warrant Article 7B-22, $172,089.24. Warrant Article 7C 20-22, $64.13. And warrant Article 7D-22, $1,386,355.75.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? If not, I'll call for a roll call for the vote. Selectman Hull?
Aye.
Dr. Z?
Aye.
Campuchico is an aye. Public input. Is there any more public input?
Mr. Chairman, I got one very little one, something I found out today. And
Ladies first.
thank you, Mr. Woods. We were talking about the flags on Census Street and Route 138. It's my understanding that the utility poles on Census Street from the bridge up, at least to the school, are going to be removed. They're putting everything underground. So, I happened to mention this to Mr. Ferry. He says, I got the flags. I said, we can still use the flags, because we've got to do the highway. But I was talking to Mr. Aguirre, and we're coming up with something else that we'll bring to the board later, but I just wanted you to know, I will follow that up. But at the Stormwater Committee meeting, when we had a break, I was talking to Attorney Mitchell, who is on the board, and we were talking about that, and he happened to mention that that's what they're doing. So, I guess flags on utility poles, that's not gonna happen, but as I said, Mr. Agnew and I thought of something we've seen in travel, so we'll get some details, but I just wanted you to know that, and we'll see, but, and Mr. Ferry knows, so.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask Selectman Goulart a question before?
Sure.
Are you thinking along the lines of what they do in Rehoboth, where they have the flags on those thin standalone metal poles?
Well, actually, again, this is only Mr. Agnew and I talking, I drew a picture for, not that I'm an artist, for Mr. Ferry. You know what a shepherd's hook looks like, a double shepherd's hook, only it would be taller, because what we have seen, he's seen it in Utah, I've seen it in Canada. the pole is mounted in the sidewalk on one side, or the highest part of the hook, because they won't be even, but the highest part will be flat. On the other side, there is a hanging basket with flowers or seasonal whatever. And what Mr. Aggie asked that was, gee, if we did the flags, maybe the school would want to do that. Again, anyone hearing this is just all discussion. But yes, what you're describing was a little different from Rehoboth, but something that we could still have the flags so that when you come over the bridge, you've got that panoramic view, got the flags there. So I don't know if that's gonna work or not, but I just wanted you to know that I heard about the utilities today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Woods.
Mr. Woods.
Yeah, I'd just like to touch a little bit on the conversation that you were having about the solar. The vice chairman of the planning board. The planning board is a special granting authority of special permits. And we have been extremely tough on solar developers, myself mainly. I don't know if you watch any of our meetings, but I've been real tough on solar. And like Mr. Hall brought up about our bylaws, we have some very strong bylaws. And in the town of Dayton, you're not allowed to see a solar farm from the road. And we put the solar farm on Tremont Street and Middle Street. We really give those people a hard time. And at their very first meeting, their attorney said to me, they said, oh, Mr. Woods, that was the first question they said. Mr. Woods, we noticed that you voted no on the last 2 solar projects. And I said, well, thank you for noticing. I hold their feet to the fire. And I just want the residents to know that if you do own a parcel of land, a big tract, it's your prerogative what you do to it. But as far as the planning board granting a permit to any solar developer, we just don't pass them out with candy. We look at every aspect in our zoning bylaws. We have some really good zoning bylaws, and the only one that we need to tweak, and we are talking about tweaking it maybe for the annual town meeting, is the buffer zone. Because the buffer zone is very small. It's only 50 feet, and sometimes we can negotiate with the developer, like we did on the new one that's gonna be going up on William Street. We did get them to bump it back to 150 feet near one of the residents' homes. So I don't want any, like the letter that you received tonight, or any other resident out there who's thinking about putting solar, to be worried about it. I mean, we are gonna do the best job that we can to make sure that they're done correctly. Just want to clear that up.
Thank you. Selectman Hull?
And in regards to that person, Mr. Wood spoke about, giving them a tough time. He's the one that really sold me. He respected and understood why. And obviously it was tough for him and it wasn't expected.
Right, he wasn't too happy with me for the first few days.
Yes, I didn't want to.
In the end, it worked out good.
Yes, but the bottom line was, he respected you and respected the decision of the board because he understood why it was being done. It was being done to protect the town. It wasn't an attack on him personally.
Right. And it was hard to get that point across, but in the end, it all worked.
He got it, he did.
That's all.
Thank you. Any other public input? Anybody on Zoom, public input?
He had his hand up.
Go ahead, I think.
Right one.
I think I just fixed my glasses.
Oh, no, I do have a question for you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
When we were discussing the community compact cabinet earlier, we're not hooked into the best practices. We could possibly still choose, for example, the municipal fiber. I'm just throwing this out there, right?
That would be a question for the town administrator.
Yes, Dr. Z, the municipal fiber is separate from best practices, and that grant process wouldn't open until next March anyways.
Oh, okay. So, okay. I thought they were making you choose one of the 4. Okay. I understand now. Thank you.
No, best practices is its own entity, and other best practices, I believe I heard based on conversation, that in 2017, that communities were allowed to choose 3. In the letter, in the letter from Lieutenant Governor Lieutenant Governor Polito, it does actually say that eligible applicants can choose up to 2.
Oh, okay. The only reason I asked, Mr. Chairman, about the municipal fiber is that's something that we've discussed as coming from the bridge, over the bridge to the municipal campus. So, okay, I'll look into it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session, and we will not be reconvening. The Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3. 3, to discuss the strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, I so declare, negotiations with Dayton Police Officers, Mass. Code 306 update.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye by roll call. Selectman
Aye.
Dr. Z?
Aye.
Chairman Chico is an aye. So we're going to be going into executive session, and we will not be reconvening. Yes.
I'd like to just make a comment in regards to this meeting this evening, especially in light of the previous 2 meetings. I want to thank the public for their input this evening, for a lot of positive ideas exchanged, and a lot of help. Mr. Woods, Mrs. Goulart, thank you for your input. Deeply appreciate it.
So we're going to go in a second session. This is cool. I didn't speak with you before you leave.
Yeah, I've got a message for you too.
Why just hang out alone over here? Someone come hang out over here. Come on,
Hold
Karen.
on, but don't leave us.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Karen, come hang out by the.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Come hang out by the Zoom.
What'd he say?
I'm just joking.
Oh, hold on, we're still on
hang
YouTube.
out by the Zoom team.
Oh, we're still live on YouTube, guys. Hold on.